If you guys can just throw like an emoji, I'll see it in your names, like a hands up or a thumbs up if you can see it. So you just say you can see it. Well, I don't hear anyone complaining. So, okay, I see Brain. Brain is saying, go right ahead. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, fantastic. You see it. So, artificial intelligence part two. So, last week, you, my brilliant audience, you enjoyed the fact that we talked about artificial intelligence. We talked about the past, and I brought us a little bit into the present. And based on the feedback, I was like, okay, I have a very, very smart congregation with me, so to speak. So I said, okay, this time around, let's even go deeper. Let me see how much I can scare them and they'll still hold. So I have the utmost faith in you. I'm only half joking, but prepare yourself for a good ride. So today I'll be talking about artificial intelligence, specifically focus on the history. History of how did we get here? How did we arrive here? I already mentioned, we talked about the past, show that humans have always been fascinated with this thing we call intelligence, but fake, so to speak, or not human. From pretty much time we could write or record stuff, even on like a papyrus or in a rock. So I start off with this quote by Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil is a very famous scientist, futurist, inventor, and he made this prediction. He wrote this fantastic book a while ago that we are pretty much about to approach the point where artificial intelligence kicks off and becomes way too smart for us. So he said, at some point in time, we're going to expand intelligence a million fold by 2045, and it's going to deepen our awareness and our consciousness. So what does that mean? What does the future of AI take us? So just keep that in mind. At some point in time, everything we're building up to, at some point in time, is going to make us so smart. Everything that came before us will make us look like, we were playing with crayons before then. So just a quick recap. What is AI? In its simplest terms, it's just, look, how can I make a machine do something that I do? And if somebody else saw it doing it, they'll say, oh, I think a human being did that. How can I automate tasks that require human intelligence? I already talked about the fact that from time almost immemorial, human beings have always desired to infuse machines with smartness, with human-like abilities. And I showed you how from Da Vinci's time all the way to the Jewish golem, there's always been almost a mythology or even just a semblance of how that would look like. And then I brought us into the 1950s, where the birth, so to speak, of modern AI occurred, and how there's been this cycle of, oh my goodness, this is the greatest thing ever. Then there's, a lot of hype, and then there's disappointment. And at which point in time, almost AI goes into hibernation. Then it comes back out again, and then there's a new breakthrough. And I also wanted to challenge you all. During the gold rush, sell shovels. Now, that quote came from the early American Wild West, so to speak. There was a guy named by name of Levi Strauss, if I recall correctly. There was a time where everybody was making their way out west to just go mine gold. He became a millionaire not by trying to mine gold. Instead, he was selling shovels. And so I made that point because in this current gold rush of AI, OpenAI, billion-dollar company. Google has been a billion-dollar company, Facebook as well. But the company that has actually taken off increasingly scarily well is actually NVIDIA, the first company to hit $1 trillion easily. So during the gold rush, sell shovels, identify the need, fill that need. So another recap, artificial intelligence. So I talked about how artificial intelligence is actually almost, it's a subdomain of data science. And then machine learning itself is a subdomain of AI. Now, the reason I did that, because a lot of times these words get thrown around interchangeably. To be frank, it's okay. A lot of times a data scientist in one company is an AI engineer in another company, in machine learning engineer in one company is a data scientist in another company. But just to make sure we're all on the same page here, AI just basically means how can this machine do something that requires human intelligence? Data science is anything that involves data. If you are pulling data, collecting data, identifying trends in it, that's data science at its simplicity. And machine learning is pretty much saying, okay, I'm going to build pretty much like a souped-up statistical mathematical model that looks at the patterns in that same data I just acquired, and I can now make predictions. I illustrated this with this picture I like so much. It reminds me of being a kid in the 90s. There was this cartoon called Voltron. And individually, they were like very super strong like machines. But when they joined together, they became this powerful animal or the powerful, I guess, robot that beats all the enemies easily. If you ever watch Power Rangers, it's the same thing. Separately, they are all fantastic. Together, you get this explosion that we now refer to as artificial intelligence. I am very biased. I'm a data scientist. I think without data, all of these people they won't survive. You can't have machine learning without data. You can't have AI without data. I think we're in the best position ever. But we can fight about that offline. But yeah, so with that, doing a quick recap, I decided that today I want to talk about the present status or the present state of artificial intelligence. And what does that look like? And so I brainstormed a way to try and break down what the word AI means, first of all. But how does that actually look like in day-to-day application? So I'm focusing on Tesla, the Tesla car specifically as a case study. And I'll show you why in a second. So we look at the subdomains of AI, right? And the last time we talked, I showed you how AI, even though it's an umbrella term, there are many different pieces underneath it. So for example, ChatGPT is considered AI, but it's also AI with prediction analytics underneath. That's machine learning. It's also AI with natural language processing. That's what enables to write to it and say, ChatGPT writes a book or writes a paragraph in the words of Chinua Achebe, and it knows you're telling it write a paragraph and specifically Chinua Achebe. Like that's natural language processing. You talk to it like you're talking to another human being. So even though AI tends to be referred to a lot of these, it's when you know all of a sudden that it's actually specific different subdomains, it gives you the power to know exactly how AI can address your needs. So rather than saying, okay, I want AI to build me a website, it's like, wait a second, I actually just need something for coding specific. Anyways, I'm jumping the gun here. Tesla is going to be a case study for understanding the present state of AI. So AI has a lot of subdomains, but I focused on the most popular ones. In today's world, when you look for example, even at your phone, even have Tesla here. When you look at your phone, for example, in your wallet, there's computer vision in action. So computer vision is pretty much just the eyes of the artificial intelligence, or the eyes of the robots, or the eyes of the machine. So for Tesla specifically, right? Tesla is a car that say, oh, it's powered by AI. It's powered by AI, but it's also powered by different subdomains of AI. One of those subdomains is computer vision. So the eyes, the camera, which is on the car, is considered to be the eyes of the camera. So the camera looks at the road and says, okay, there's an obstacle ahead. I should keep that in mind. And it has very powerful algorithms. And remember what I said, an algorithm is like a recipe. It's pretty much saying, okay, if there is A, do B. Like, and that's in its simplest terms. So you may hear me throwing these big words. You guys are very brilliant. I know you guys will understand this. But the eyes of the car, and I'll say, okay, look, you're driving, there's a child about to run in. I see it flags an account, an action that says, okay, brake. So the car is able to interact with the real world because it can literally see the real world. Computer vision itself, you can decide, okay, I want to venture into AI, and all I'm ever going to do is just computer vision. There are people who get their PhDs, and all they do is just venture into this small, well, not really small to be honest, actually huge. This subdomain of AI, is computer vision. So I hope you're trying to understand now that AI is not necessarily just a thing, like one thing. It's actually an umbrella term for so many things. So computer vision is one. Now let's look at the other one, planning and robotics. Now, planning and robotics refers to how can I get from point A to point? That's it in its simplest terms. So with the Tesla car, right, you already have the computer vision. Now you can see the road, right? So now you're driving and you say, I want to get from Lagos Island to Ketchup. Now it has the same kind of like GPS algorithm running on it, but it's way more advanced and way more suited up because in the car, as it's driving, it's actually tracking other vehicles ahead of it. So even though you're going to Ikeja, it has already looked at 4 or 5 cars up ahead. So let's just say the car up ahead suddenly brakes. A human being may maybe take a human being 5 seconds to react. The car is instantaneous. It reacts quickly. I once had the pleasure, or I'll say displeasure, of driving one of my friend's cars. He drives a Tesla. And after I drove it for about an hour, it actually started to mess with me because when you drive it, it starts to recognize the road you're on. So if it sees a stop sign, for example, a red light, it actually starts braking before you start braking. So the first 10 minutes, every time I try to hit the brake, it already was starting to stop, starting to slow down. And that's because it's literally thinking way faster than I am. It's like, okay, look, Korede is going to hit the brake, but now I can really see that there's a stop sign. There's a red light. It tells me it's a stop sign. It's planning ahead. I'm going to slow down. After I drove my friend's car and I drove my car, let's just say when I got to the stop sign and I have to remember, okay, Corey, you better hit that brake or else you're going to have to crash into somebody, you know. And this is going to be the new kind of like life we live in where the cars take literally the task off us. You don't have to think to yourself, okay, I have to hit the brake every time. So remember what I said about how AI is just trying to make a machine do a task for us that a human being can. Like that's literally in a nutshell. So planning robotics just tells the car, okay, something is going to happen. Keep it in mind, you know. So car can see with computer vision. Car can now plan ahead. Okay, somebody might break. There might be a tree on the road. A child might run out. Anticipate that while also taking you to your destination. So your GPS is still telling you you're going to get to catch that. However, it's also keeping in mind all the obstacles that can be in place. And now this isn't just unique to Tesla. I think most modern cars from I want to say 2023, if you buy a new car, it's kind of standard. I don't know how common it is in Nigeria, but it's kind of standard that you're driving and to start to flag, to either flag that okay, there's an obstacle ahead, or the brakes will actually kick in. You know, so that's going to be the new reality for a lot of us. So those that are agile drivers will have to adjust with time because you can't just be hitting the brakes every time. So may God bless us all that will be driving Teslas. Now, so we're seeing computer vision. I can see the road. Planning, I know what's on the road. Now let's talk about how do I talk to my car, right? So natural language processing, this is just another subdomain of AI. So we have computer vision, one subdomain, planning, one subdomain, natural language processing, another subdomain. Now, I'm going to step a little bit outside of Tesla and say, if, for example, you have a project that requires you to interact, let's just say with an app or with a software or a program, natural language processing is AI you need. Some people say, oh, I need AI for something. You don't need AI umbrella. You do, but what you actually need is natural language processing. So if you now go to somebody and say, hey, look, or let's just say computer scientist or programmer or software engineer, hey, I need to have a project, I need to have a program that can talk to me, understand what I'm saying, interpret whatever data I'm going to bring to you. So if you're in logistics and shipping logistics, for example, I'm going to give this unique data set that's not available to anyone. I want to be able to talk to this app and say, okay, the ship is going to arrive at 9 a.m. At 9 a.m., I want to know how long it's going to take to disembark. This is where natural language processing comes to. This is what allows the machine to understand you. So you talk to the robot and the robot knows, okay, not only are you speaking English, but it can actually pick up mood, tone, for example. So if, for example, somebody says, oh, hey Siri, I'm not so happy, play this song, or play me a random song. Siri would be able to connect, I'm not happy, and go, okay, this person probably wants a much more mellow song. Siri will not put up a song that'll make you hype. Now, a lot of times you don't really think about that. Like, how in the world does Siri know that? That's really where this subdomain of AI comes in. It actually infuses the machine to know, okay, here is how you can understand how human beings talk. For us, it's just natural. Like we're just talking about it, but how does a computer? So natural language processing as a subdomain of AI, this is where we cannot give the computer, the machine, whatever it is, the ability to understand what we say, the tone of what we're saying, and also provide context. So I have here that NLP allows the car to understand human speech. So in a Tesla, you can talk to the car and say, okay, pull up the weather, whatever it is, right? As it is right now, even though I put an example that said, I bet trying to go to the nearest police station, I'm pretty sure it doesn't understand pidgin. But if you're one of those enterprising people that can create your own NLP subdomain, AI, I'm pretty sure there's a market for you there. So whoever is there, you're welcome. I give you a free idea. But the point of NLP as a subdomain of AI is it allows you to talk to the machine in conversational language and that you understand. So now, showing you 3 subdomains of AI. Now let's look at the 4th one. One of my favorites, machine learning. So remember my analogy from last week where I talked about how machine learning is pretty much like, imagine you take a very smart 2-year-old and you tell the 2-year-old child, hey, we're going to go to this library. And this library has endless books, just so many books, And then you say, okay, look, child, this is an apple, this is an orange. And after a while, the child reads through all those books and says, oh, I can now tell what an apple and an orange is, right? And then you now say, okay, let's just go crazy. I'm not going to tell you what fruits are. Just go read up, and you cannot tell me what's a banana, what's an orange, what's an apple. That's pretty much my machine learning is. You're getting like a huge amount of information or data. You're not saying, okay, I'm going to train you on this. And there are different ways you can train it. Some models, when you train it, you can say, I'm going to give you a reward. If you get it right, then I'll almost like I won't spank you. So it's called reinforcement learning, and that's the technical term. Others is called supervised learning. You say, okay, this is an apple. This is an orange. Remember that. Coming back to the Tesla car, right? So machine learning, you train the car on so many videos of people driving, and you say, okay, look, when you're driving and an Okada or Kekemawa comes on your left, there's a 90% likelihood, probability that they will veer into you. Be careful. So the car starts driving, and when a Kekemawa starts to approach, it already has the likelihood that, okay, this car is going to jump in front of it. So as soon as the car does that, it hits the brake, even before the Kekemawa even tries it, So machine learning allows the literally the machine to learn from past experiences. Now, there's a little bit of a asterisk to that because it's learning from past experiences specific to some places. So if you take a Tesla car and you bring it to Nigeria and you try to let it auto drive itself, you're having trouble. Because a lot of times, these cars have been trained on videos of Americans driving or Europeans driving in Europe, right? More likely to follow the rules, but not really as defensive driving as we are in Nigeria, for example. So a person here, if he was to drive and you're not expecting the pothole or the random person that might run out, because you cross the street anywhere. The machine learning model here would actually screen because it won't even know to anticipate them, which means, ironically enough, it might lead to problems. So the upside to that is in a system where you can train the model on what it knows, it works. Outside of that system, there is a problem. So let's just assume this is a fantastic version of Nigeria. This Tesla is driving on that fantastic road. No Olokpa, no Kekemawa to jump out, no pothole, no nothing. Fantastic. So it's driving down. It has trained on decades of Nigerian people driving. It knows what to expect. This now talks to the other three submodels. It talks to computer vision. It's looking at the road. It talks to planning. What is front of the road? I'm trying to get to my destination. It talks to the natural language processing subdomain as well. Okay, the driver just told me, keep the speed at 60 miles per hour. So all of them are now working in tandem. At the same time, this is all AI, but this is all subdomains of AI. Once again, you can now say, okay, this is exactly what I want if I'm working on a project. I just want machine learning. I have a huge amount of data. I want to learn this. I'm not really interested in computer vision because I don't care if my phone sees whatever it is. I just wanted to know based on number of data from accounting, for example, like accounting data set spreadsheets. I just wanted to predict the likelihood of fraud. I don't need it to see the room. I just needed to learn that, okay, for 20 years in the banking industry, fraud occurred at this time, so people were likely to try and skim off money. Okay, look at it, look at the patterns, identify the people who are most likely to do that, blah, blah, blah. So this is where machine learning really comes into play. Now, let's look at one of the oldest forms of AI, but also my favorite. It's called expert systems. So remember last week, I talked about how good old-fashioned AI was very rule-based. You had to pretty much tell it, if this is X, Y. If a patient comes in and they have a high fever, they said they went out camping, likelihood they have malaria or tsetse fly or something like that. You code it in and you say, here are the rules. If there's a red light, come to a stop. If you see a stop sign, come to a stop. So you coded those rules. So coded those rules into the car, and it kind of works in its own way too, as almost like another level of redundancy, but it helps. So if, for example, the computer vision doesn't see the red lights, for example, well, it has to see the red, but let's just say it doesn't. But the expert system picks up on it because it misses it before it tells the machine learning. It will say, okay, there's a red light that the computer vision missed telling the car. I'm going to tell the car there was a red light, you better hit the brakes, So it works in a way to tell the car the rules to expect as it's driving. Okay, so you're driving down a 3-lane road or highway. Those dotted lines stay within those dotted lines. That's a rule. That's a system. You're about to turn right. Indicate before you turn right. So you code those rules into the car and simplifying this book because this is like some very heavy algorithms where it's processing on the fly. It's like it's in real time. And it's taking in all this information and then it's running like heavy mathematics and saying, what's the probability that the car will venture out of, out of its lane? Okay, it's a 90% probability. Why is it 90% probability? So because it's another car approaching on the left, And then the expert system kicks in and says, no, to stay in your lane unless the car ventures into yours. So all three of them, all actually all 6 or 7 or 8 of these subdomains are all talking to each other at the same time, telling each other, okay, keep this in mind. You're looking at the road, I'm planning ahead, I'm talking to the driver, I am predicting the likelihood of somebody veering into me. I am also looking at the rules of the road. Okay, it's a green light, go. And then we come to the brains of the car. And this is referred to as the brain because in this subdomain, we refer to as neural network. Now, neural networks has a very interesting history because it came about in the 50s. Actually, I would say almost as far back as the 30s, where it was built on how the human brain, like literal neural network works. And the way it works is kind of like this, because once again, very heavy mathematics. Think about if you have a room of very smart kids once again. You have like 10 kids. You go to the first kid and you just say, okay, here's a piece of paper with like an outline of a drawing, figure it out. So the first kid, draws a circle, pass it to the next kid. The next kid puts 2 dots on it. Another kid puts, ears on it. And by the time it gets to the last kid says, oh, it's a cat. So what neural network does is pretty much, it looks at an input, so to speak. So let's just say it's looking at the road and it's saying, okay, am I looking at a road? Or am I looking at a ditch? Or am I looking at a gutter? And it's trying to figure it out. And so neural networks tend to be one of the more powerful subdomains of AI because this is really where the thinking, so to speak, of AI comes into place. And this is where a lot of times where they talk about AI being a black box, here is where you see a lot of it. Like all of this, very much a black box, but neural network is when, because it's so layered and the way it works is it passes. So another thing that's about the kids, right? Imagine you pass to the fifth kid. The fifth kid has the drawing, right? And the fifth kid, now you now go to the fifth kid and say, what are you drawing? The fifth kid might say, I don't know. I don't know if it's a cat yet or not, like I'm still trying to figure it out. You now go to the 10th kid and you now tell the 10th kid, how do you know it was a cat? He was like, well, the last kid told me that. But it requires to like track each and one of those kids. A neural network doesn't have 10 kids. A neural network has billions of kids. Billions. So imagine like, or rather neural nodes, right? So imagine you're talking to billions of kids and trying to figure out, how do you figure out that it was a ditch? Do you have to now run through every single one of those billions that are being run like instantaneous in real time, seconds? So a lot of times your phone is like, sometimes you can't even tell how it gets its result because it's running through so many heavy computations, through so many different pathways that by the time you even get the outputs, the part of you is like, yeah, I don't want to figure out how you got here because there is so much work that will come into play. So coming back to the Tesla again, so Tesla has its own, referred to as a neural network, like it's called the full self-driving system. And so what that does is it's also trained on millions and millions of miles of driving data. So it looks at how people have driven for a long time and it makes its own deductions and says, okay, like I've seen millions of people driving. For some reason, on a Sunday, people are less likely to drive fast. Okay, so on a Sunday, when whoever is driving me out is driving me, I can ease off more on accelerating. I'm just going to use that to also increase the lifetime efficiency of the car. Now you take a car on Sunday, I'm like, man, that's so deep. Like, how does the car know I want to actually take it slow today and have a slow drive? It's because it was built on millions of other people's driving skills, millions of other people's driving habits and driving information. So the neural network, very similar to machine learning, that allows you to spot, trends and patterns. Okay, here's what's likely to happen. And so all 6 of them now talk to each other within the car while you're driving, all at the same time in real time. And so we refer to as AI. So they are all AI and they are all subdomains of AI. So I use this example because I also want to show how if you can look at AI less as just one word, oh, what's AI? What's AI? I realize like, okay, it's actually subdomains of stuff of intelligence. And if you have a project, for example, and you say, okay, I want to do something, I want to transcribe text messages, or I want to transcribe books. You're not looking at, for example, of expert systems. You're probably looking more at natural language processing and speech recognition. So text to speech, speech to text generation. So now okay, I do want AI, but I want NLP, natural language processing. If you're trying to create a medical system that looks at tons of diseases and can diagnose them, you want an expert system. You want something that mimics how experts move, how experts think. Okay, the patient came in at 2 a.m., they had this history, they have the symptoms, expert system. So after a while, you now start to say, okay, here's how I'm going to solve my problem. And the reason I say this because a lot of times, I try to always say, Corey, just humble yourself. Yes, you know what they mean when they say AI, but because I have conversations with people, I'm like, it's not magic. It's actually it's a whole lot of things underneath. It's actually just mathematics, but I'm biased. I'm a math guy. But I also have to understand because of the way it's marketed, it almost has a very appealing, seductive allure of, oh my goodness, it's we don't understand this. No, it's very easy to well, it's not too easy to understand, but it's easy enough to understand. So if we now put it all together, right, and we're looking back again as the Tesla, right? So computer vision, something of AI, that's the eyes of the car, robotics and planning, that's when you're combining senses from one side to hearing. Okay, what is the car seeing? What is the car hearing as you're driving by? Then you have machine learning. Okay, I want to think ahead. There's a red light up ahead, but for some reason it's freezing. People have already stopped, 4 or 5 cars down. There's probably an accident. I'm going to start slowing down. You also have planning. You're trying to figure out the safest action. You've looked at the map. For some reason, there is a traffic leading to Korede, but going through Yaba is free. Okay, why is that? Okay, I'm going to reroute even before the GPS tells me that. Natural language processing, NLP. You're talking to the driver. You say, okay, the driver has told me avoid every place that has toll gates. Okay, I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm going to avoid every place that has toll gates. So the driver can just say avoid toll gates. And you have to understand that the cars understand he or she means avoid toll gates. The expert systems, as you're driving through Lagos, you see a new sign that says, one way. You understand it's one way, and you slowly start to stop. Neural networks, the brain of the car, trained on millions and millions and millions of miles of data used. All different kinds of people driving, all ways people have, suddenly stopped, braked, taken off, it. And this is where my mischievous self is very curious because when I see Teslas in Nigeria, I'm like, man, I hope you guys have your insurance is loaded because if you ever turn on that, self-driving on, you're in trouble. Because once again, as I said, it's trained on American driving, European driving. Nigeria people very, very, I'll use the word defensive drivers. Driving like I'm about to take you out and you're also about to take me out. Bring it here and you tell the car to keep driving within its lane. For example, you're in trouble. Sometimes you don't even drive within your lane for your own safety. So I'm curious to see like where the future of AI will go as that becomes more and more common in Nigeria. And I mean like the self-driving aspect, for example, in cars. Now, I've mentioned all the subdomains of AI, but I also want to touch on a different one. And this one came about because of a conversation last week and it had to do with how can we make money for Potter's Outreach? And so I want to talk about a new-ish subdomain of AI, Gen AI. So Gen AI is technically oldish. If you come from like the mathematics background, there's something known as Markov chains. That's actually seen as the first form of generative media. And this was actually in the early 1900s. I want to say 1910, 1920. So once again, math people are carrying the entire world, but it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We have to be humble. But Gen AI really kicked off actually in the last decade. And one of the most famous ones that everybody knows is the ChatGPT. And what Gen AI basically means is artificial intelligence that can generate, in quotes, new content. And that ranges from music, movies, code. Oh my goodness, code. That's where I've actually I use that a lot. So I'm split on this one because Gen AI is fantastic as a creative tool, as a tool for productivity, as a tool to help your work. On the other hand, it's trained on so many of other people's work, which is the reason why it's so good at what it does. So if you go to ChatGPT, for example, and you said, I want like create an image in the style of Bruce Onobrape, pardon my pronunciation, famous Nigerian artist, it would do it perfectly. Mr. Bruce won't get any money out of this. So sometimes, and I'm touching a bit of where we get in a second, like the ethics of AI is that it's very fantastic if you want to speed up your creative process or creative pipeline. But if you have to really think about how it's got there, it can be very discouraging because if there those of you who are creatives in this audience today, and you've drawn a lot of things and you put it online, Instagram, Facebook, wherever it is, their data scrapers have scraped it. So let's just say you blow and you blow in Jesus' name. Tomorrow, and I say, okay, I want this drawn in the styles of Ebenezer. I want this drawn in the styles of Stanley. I want this code in the styles of Stanley. Like it will give me so close to it that I'm like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. So I don't know. I want to put that seed in your just in your mind as you go, as you use this tool. Just to think about it. Use it as a tool to enhance your creativity. But as a tool to emulate people you're fans of, just consider it. That's all. So what does Gen AI do? I've already said it's trained large amounts of data. It allows you to create new content, right? From text, code, um, anything that you can currently create digitally. I don't know about physically yet until you can get a robot that can like sculpt or wood. We're not there yet. But if it's digital, there are all these tools for it. So the tools I tend to use in my and I'm not, endorsing them per se, but because I'm a lazy person, I tend to use ChatGPT a lot, especially like to refine a lot of things I write. I use a Microsoft Copilot. GitHub Copilot is great. After a while, I had to stop because I was reading a forum, and this maybe when it gets a little too nerdy, and it talks about the loss of engaging with other people, other online forums where you ask for questions and where you ask a question and they give you technical answers. Because remember what I said, like a lot of this has been trained on other people's responses and answers. And so it says in the long run, what will happen is it's going to lead to a dearth, so to speak, like an end of human conversation online where you're trying to solve problems because people will just say, I'm just going to go over to GitHub Copilot to solve a problem. And I won't lie, it's fantastic when I get into issues. Now, I'm never going to use it to create like a whole project because you'll just run into so many bugs, you want to lose your mind. But as just to try and test is really, really great. So keep that in mind. That's all I'll say. I know, I've given it to you, but I've also given you a bit of caution. Keep it in mind. Keep it in mind as well. So let's talk about the future of AI. So I started off with a quote by Kurt Kurzweil, where he said, by 2045, intelligence will explode a millionfold. Now, why did he say that? So Ray Kurzweil, he's a he's a very interesting person. He's considered to be like a modern thinker, a scientist, an AI scientist from like the 70s. That's how long he's been in it. He created a text recognition algorithm back in the 60s and 70s. Like he has been in this world for a long time. And for him, his school of thought was at some point in time, the technology will catch up, the algorithms will catch up, the world will catch up, and then we'll have an explosion of AI knowledge. We'll have an explosion of all these subdomains, not just being as good as human beings, but even being better. And so he says by 2029, AI will catch up to human intelligence. That's why we have AGI, artificial general intelligence. That means you have an AI. So if you have a ChatGPT agent and you say, okay, ChatGPT, teach me how to play music, you can do that. ChatGPT, load up all the music in my house, teach me how to cook, it can do that. Like, so basically, you can even say, okay, ChatGPT, perform surgery, it will do it. Like the idea is like it's artificial generalized, but it can work in any model, any form, and still be brilliant. I don't know if I'm too happy about that, but we'll see. Then he now says by 2045, and this is where I'll move on to the next slide. And this is what he says, a very interesting thing will occur. And this is referred to as the singularity. And the reason why it's referred to as singularity is a point at which, as I mentioned, technology catches up, the computational power catches up, and we won't even know it per se, or rather, we won't be able to predict it, but we will know when it happens because to put it in simple terms, imagine you have this super smart robot, this artificial intelligence models I've talked about. But you are the one that has to train it, right? It has to be trained on prior data, on past data. Well, at some point in time, these modules, AI becomes smarter than us. So smart, it doesn't even need us to train it. And so what it's going to start doing is going to actually start to create versions of itself. So ChatGPT, let's just ChatGPT as like an example. It's like, okay, look, all I do is I talk to you guys and I give you guys answer. Whatever. That is boring. I actually want a smarter version of myself. And you guys can't give me any, you can't train me anymore. And to put it, and when I say training, it means you have a huge data set and you say run through it, analyze patterns, whatever it is. The last time ChatGPT, OpenAI trained their ChatGPT model, they spent, I want to say, was it $2 billion? This is really expensive stuff. They're scraping the entire internet for this. When I imagine that it's so smart, it says, I don't even need you guys anymore. I'm just going to start creating versions of myself. I'm going to start solving the problems for you because you guys don't even know how to solve it. And so on the chart, you see where we are now, where it says the human intellect, we're doing good. But at some point in time, and he says this is like 2029, human intelligence and machine intelligence will be on par. And then there'll be this exponential explosion, this exponential growth, where it just passes on. And then he now posits that we will now have human beings who are interfaced with cybernetics, human beings who are integrated with the, like, for example, like with the computer network, because that's the only way we'll be able to survive, we'll be able to live, because the machines will be so smarter than us. It's like, think about if a monkey created a very smart machine, at some point in time, the machine's gonna be like, yeah, I don't have to live in the trees anymore. You guys will always live in the trees. You guys will always want to eat banana. You guys always want to swing around. Like, I'm just going to go and create a city somewhere. And that's where a lot of like AI futurists, it's like, it might be great for us because it can solve so many of our problems, it can solve health concerns, poverty, disease. And then a lot of reservation is, so to speak, or people who are more conservative about it say, look, at that point in time, we're not going to, are we really humans? Like, would we be able to think for ourselves? Something is doing everything for us. I fall on the conservative side. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that version of the future excites me. It's actually weird. It terrifies me, because the idea of everything being taken care of me, and I have no choice, is very, very weird. But that's what he posits, and there is enough evidence to point towards. When I say enough, just enough, they're like, okay, we can see. So 2029 is the first. We'll see if that happens, then we'll go from there. But we aren't there yet. Right now it's really a hypothetical point of view with some amount of evidence. But we'll keep in mind. Now, I personally, because I'm biased, I fall in the other school of thought. So one school of thought is we will approach singularity, point in time where AI passes us, much more than us, will do everything for us. I fall in the side of, of a guy named Jan LeCun, and he's not just a guy, to be honest. He's considered one of the godfathers of AI. Very brilliant man. Won the Turing Award for outstanding achievement in computer science. And this Turing Award is kind of like the Nobel Prize, the Grammy Award, the Oscars of computer science. And he developed in the 80s, mind you, this deep learning algorithm. And what it allowed you to do was, it allowed you to say, okay, how can I be inspired by the human brain? Instead of giving the computer like a list of rules to follow, you can now give it examples and to learn itself. So very, 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 very impressive, man. He's French American. I recommend you look him up online. Fantastic guy. But he falls on the side of, this would be a fantastic tool. This would be a great tool, but it's not going to be something that we will make, in quotes, digital gods. So his quote here, which I love so much, it says, machine learning is great, but the idea that somehow we're going to just scale up the techniques that we have and then we'll get to human level AI. No, we are missing something big to get machines to learn efficiently, like humans and animals do. And he's very correct, because currently what's happening across the tech world is all the AI models they're still improving, but there's almost like a plateauing effect, like a slowing down effect. Because for a long time, the arms race was, the more data, the more smarter the machine is. And after a while, they gave it all the data at once, and it's like the rewards were not scaling up, because they kept expecting at some point in time there will be some level of just sheer brilliance that will pop out that will bring us closer to the singularity. But that's not been the case. Instead, it just gets a little bit better, just a little bit more. And so he was making this point that even right now, if you talk to researchers, and not necessarily the people who are like trying to hype it up and sell it to you, they'll say, yeah, there's like a plateauing effect, and we have to move from a philosophical way of thinking by saying, oh, if you just read everything, if the machine just reads everything to be smart. And what they're starting to understand, like, the computer scientists, the philosophers, the psychologists, is that, okay, human beings are not just data drinking machines. Like, us just reading books isn't what gives us the intelligence. There's something more. And that's more is what they're working on right now. So I like to follow him a lot, because a lot of what he does and what he says, he's actually thinking 5 years into the future, like the project he's working on. So he's been working like a ChatGPT, whatever he's working on, which is it's very hush hush. It's something we'll find out 4 or 5 years from now. So he's a fantastic person to follow if you're very interested in the club. Lots of interviews online. I like him as a stabilizing factor to the AI hype, because the problem with the AI hype is when it gets too large and there's a bust, and then we go back into the AI winter, there's a huge effect that will come out of that. I don't think there'll be an AI winter, but the hype is really there. So we will see. So Jan LeCun, highly recommended. He's more on the conservative side. Machine learning artificial intelligence will be a tool for us. It will be something that will control us, or something that we will just give up all our human agency to and say, go ahead. Now, with that in mind, so I've talked about the future of AI, when we get to the point of the quote singularity, or is it a tool that we're, that's fantastic for us, So now I have to think about how do we use AI? What are the use cases, but why do we use AI and what are the effects? And so I want to touch on the ethics of AI. And I put this quote that I put from last week where it said, a man said, let me create intelligence in our own image. And I put that there because if we now understand AI as there's data, a computer algorithm is trained on this data. This data is created by us human beings. What does that mean? The AI is going to reflect us. It's going to reflect our beauty, but it's also going to reflect our ugliness. And so one of the concerns I have when it comes to AI ethics, and I'll talk about 6 main concerns, as we move forward in time, last week I talked about how NVIDIA that creates a lot of these GPU chips and that provides a lot of the power for like data centers. In order for those data centers to exist, they require huge amounts of power. And I'm talking like super amounts of electricity. We don't have any data science center, AI center in Nigeria because I mean, unless you own a power plant right now, you're willing to go seduce or go talk to the ones in America, like it's going to be hard because they need places that have access to a lots of electricity, lots of ways to cool the power plant. So I'll give an example. Right now, all of the data science centers, they build it on lakes or inside mountains that have waters or rivers running through it. Why? So that those rivers can cool it down, can cool down the data system. Because imagine like buildings, like massive buildings with lots and lots of data farms. Like think of like rows and rows of like very heavy computers. The amount of heat has been dissipated. And so in regions where these data science centers are being built, residents complain about like low water flow or like there's an increase in algae in the rivers because the water is so warm. So most plants are like dying off. Instead, algae is growing there, which is choking all the oxygen in it. And so as a result, the environment is taking a hit. The power consumption, which is the amount of power you have to put in. So let's just say you have a power plant and either generating it through like let's just say hydro generation or let's just say maybe even coal. That is so much strain on the Earth's resources. Then you go a step further as you're trying to keep up with your competition, right? You are acquiring more and more GPUs, more and more computers, more and more faster, heavier machinery. And you're throwing out the old stuff. So you're just increasing waste all across the board. Now, I do apologize, now I'm going to be about to hit the time limit here, which I just did. So let me talk about fairness, bias, and accountability real quick. So fairness and bias. 2 years ago, no, not 2 years, 5 years ago, when Apple released this credit card, they noticed that a lot of women were getting rejected, even though they had high credit histories. And that's because it was trained on historical records of people getting credit cards. And so imagine you're training your algorithm on records of people getting credit cards up till the 1950s, right? So that's when credit cards came to be. Up until 1980 in America, a woman couldn't get a credit card without her husband signing off, which means far fewer women could get credit cards. So the algorithm is like, oh, a woman applied. Yeah, I don't think she's going to get this because it's looking at the history and saying, yeah, I don't think women get credit cards for some reason, but doesn't know the historical context that no, women weren't allowed to get credit cards like even the 1980s. The husband had to sign you off. And so a lot of times, over and over, we see this this case where the algorithm tries to, in quotes, help us. But it shuts out a whole category of people. And that is on race, on gender, socioeconomic. So if you're poor, if somebody's poor historically, or they've lived in the hood, they'll try and get a loan and they have very good credit history, they have a good, account, financial account or financial health. It's just say, oh, well, this person grew up in the hood, people who live in the hood, historically poor, they can't afford it. Even though on paper, they have a fantastic financial health. Now, let's talk about accountability and transparency. Last year, something funny happened. So a man who had recently lost I won't say his grandmother or his mom, he had filed a bereavement, to get a bereavement refund for his ticket so he doesn't fly. The AI chatbot told him, oh, no, go ahead and fly. Then when you get back, you can just file for it and we'll refund you. It was wrong. But because it had been trained on, I guess, Aaron's data, it gave him the wrong information. He goes ahead and then Air Canada says, no, we're not going to refund you. And pretty much has to take him to court. It could have now says to him, oh no, the AI is different from us. Even though the AI is on our system, on our website, we have no legal responsibility for it. Now that was struck down quickly in court because say, no, no, how can you have an AI chatbot hosted on your website and you're telling me that you have no authority over it? And so as we move forward in time, this kind of situation are going to come up where they will say, oh, we have no jurisdictional rights. We just trained it, but yes, it told you to jump into the river, but that has nothing to do with us. So because there aren't very strict regulations right now, companies can find ways to squeeze past this. Now, I'm going to talk some more about privacy, security, autonomy, and world power. Now, I'll combine these three because I really respect y'all's time, and I really appreciate you staying this long. So, privacy and security. Security if you drive down some streets, well, actually a lot of streets, a lot of roads in Europe or even America, there are these weird, you might notice this weird like cameras just to the side of the road. And what these cameras do is supposed to reduce crime prevention. So it scans every car that drives by, it scans your license plates. The tricky thing is this, if you have cameras all around the city that can track your license plates. At some point in time, it means they can actually track your movement. And so this data gets shared with like different companies. So they'll say, okay, for example, Korede, he got into his car, license plates LXG. He drove to Ebano. We saw him at Ebano, then he drove to Unilag, got pop there. Yeah, I don't know. He drove to I don't know, drove to a restaurant. They can now go and sell the data to restaurants and say, oh, by the way, every Monday, Corey always stops by your restaurant. Okay, keep that in mind. And they might not say necessarily Corey, but they'll create a profile about me with similar people. They'll say people who tend to go shop at Eban or they tend to stop at this store and they tend to come to your restaurant. Start of everything has to be connected to the grid, connected to AI. AI has to solve all our problems. We are reducing the capacity to just say, I just want to live without always being monitored, always being surveilled. And because, especially against getting way better, especially with Gen AI, generative artificial intelligence, where it's generating content, you can now create deep fakes of individuals. Like when I hear on the news this day something that's happened, I'm like, yeah, I'm not even going to look at that until I don't know CNN or New York Times reports on it because that might be fake. If I see it on social media, I'm like, yeah, I don't even know. I don't believe it because that's kind of where I am now. It's like, yeah, because it can be easily faked. Now let's talk about autonomy, human agency. Um, Something really funny occurred where the Swedish minister talked about how he talked to ChatGPT and he asked ChatGPT for ideas, or he bounces his ideas, his policy ideas with ChatGPT, and he created an uproar. This is what we refer to as autonomy and human agencies. Like there's an over reliance on AI. Okay, AI, what am I going to eat today? AI, how should I send this email? The longer I work, the more hilarious I find emails these days because emails are getting way, way more polished. I'm thinking, is everybody in my department, is everybody I know suddenly like, Shakespeare writer? Like these emails are just sublime. And I know, okay, what they're doing is they're writing it, they're putting it in ChatGPT, they're sending it to me. And what do I do? Okay, I'm like, okay, I'll reply you. Then I get my reply and I put it back to ChatGPT and I send it to them. So just ChatGPT talk to ChatGPT. Wow, brilliant. We now live in a world where we're humans, but we're talking past each other because over reliance on AI. Wealth and power inequality. This is the big one. As we race into the future, those that have access to power, those that have access to money, the gap is just going to widen. OpenAI just recently launched a $60 billion power plant, or not a power plant, a data center for its AI modeling. It has its own natural gas plant, basically its own plant to power it. How are you going to keep up with that in a country like, say, Nigeria? Nigeria is very, very blessed. For $60 billion, I don't think is the Dangote refinery was it that much? So what I'm trying to say is, as we race forward in time, and countries and companies that have access to funds historically or whatever it is, the gap between those of us who are still trying to like figure out a way, and those who already have it is going to increase. So imagine at some point in time, ChatGPT or Google or Facebook now says, okay, we now have an AGI, artificial general intelligence, and this can help, quantify or solve your economic issues, and they sell that. Okay, it's going to be $5 billion. Your state can deploy it. Your economic issues are solved. If you can't afford that, your country or your state just goes down because you can't compete. Now that's like a huge example. But the point is, as we move forward in time, And as the wealth has already started to really, 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 really become more and more polarized, so become more and more visible. This is going to be the new reality. Those who have access to it, those who have access to resources, those who are in much more advanced countries will just take off. The rest of us will stay behind. And I share this point with you. I got it from a New York Times article on global divide, and it showed how across the world, the United States has 26 specified data science centers or artificial intelligence centers that build and are built to push and power the artificial intelligence or models. Africa as a whole has four, and all of them are in South Africa. There's none in Nigeria, like absolutely none. And so tying back to what I said about how, developed countries will just take up and the rest of us will have to catch up. As this happens, as this keeps moving forward, we talk about Japa right now. There'll be Japa 4.2 again, because a lot of people who are specializing in machine learning, software engineering, mathematics, who can't work in, how many people are going to run to South Africa at this point? But who can't work in Africa? They're going to go where? To Europe, to America, to China. And so places like Nigeria will just even get further left behind because the brain drain would just worsen. So I find it funny because I've known of jackpot since I was a kid, and I'm thinking, so my kids are also going to experience jackpot like that. That's crazy. So the brain drain loop will just keep on going. And that's something to just think about. I do appreciate your time. I'm not taking too much. I'll leave you with this quote on ethics by Dr. Joy Walamwini. I do apologize for killing her name, but she's a Canadian, Ghanaian, American artificial intelligence, machine learning, software engineering ethicist. And she made this point in a podcast I was into a while ago, where she says, AI is ultimately a reflection of humanity. So all of these critiques about the people, also all of these critiques are about the people who are creating technology. Because some people will be like, oh, yeah, the machine is biased, but we're not so. Well, like, where do you think the machine is getting the bias from? So as we move on and we apply and use AI in our work, our projects, whatever it is, remember that it's based on human intelligence, it's based on human history, it's based on human data. So it reflects our beauty, also reflects the darkness that we also have. And I will end on this last slide where I will provide a little bit of a teaser for next week. So Dr. Uloma, she more or less inspired me to say, okay, how can we make money with AI? So I've talked about ethics. So we have to find an ethical way to make money with AI. So next week we'll be talking about how to make money with AI. As I like to say, after Uncle Shay also challenged me how to spread the gospel and be a good steward of the earth God has blessed us with. So I say always to identify a need, apply your domain knowledge, because it's what you know that you can use to solve a problem. Collaborate with others, try, question mark, that's from South Park, and then profit. At this point in time, I'll be taking questions. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your patience. Please go ahead and let me know what you think, what questions you have. No questions, no questions. Fantastic. I knew you guys were smart people. That's so okay. I'll start looking at names and start asking questions in the chat. I know what you guys do, so I'm going to start saying, okay, Innocence, tell me about how AI can help you. I'm joking, Innocence, you don't have to answer, but any reflections, any thoughts? Don't tell me I scared everybody today. Wonderful. Okay, well, I have questions. I see Dr. Loma. Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Loma.
You said all the AI gurus will leave us and go to America. That's why we are all quiet.
Well, don't worry, we'll be the change we want in the country. So we start we can start the change now and can stay in this country, we can stay in a beloved country and make it better.
Amen, amen, amen.
Man,
Okay, so thank you so much for the presentation. Very fantastic.
thank
So I
you.
was just thinking, when you mentioned Nigeria not being I don't want to use the word conducive for AI growth. Like when you gave an instance of Tesla self-driving, of course
Mm.
I can imagine self-driving Tesla in Lagos. Wow. I wonder how that's going to be quite difficult. But then how I know we are other countries are far advanced when it comes to AI. I still believe that somehow we can these countries that are advanced in AI, they started somewhere.
Indeed.
And how can we where can we start? Definitely I believe AI can be of great benefit to us in Nigeria. But where are these small steps? What are the small steps we can take in Nigeria to? I don't think that just somebody can become so overwhelmed about the gap between advanced countries and developing countries like Nigeria and decide to give up,
Mm.
which is what happens in life when you see a big goal and you say you can't do this, and so you decide not to try.
Mm.
But contrary to that, as Christians, the Bible says we are a royal priesthood. We are special. God created us to be extraordinary, and your location should not change that. So I want to ask you, what are the small steps that we can take in Nigeria to move the needle forward when it comes to AI? Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic question. And so I'll touch on the Tesla analogy. So the funny thing is, Tesla won't really kick off in Nigeria. But let's just say there's an enterprising Unilag or Uniban, Onsuka board. It's like, look, those Tesla guys, they're training their models on Nigeria, on American roads. Here in Nigeria, we don't really follow the same way. I'm going to put a camera on my car and I'm just going to drive around. I'm going to convince 10 of my friends to do the same. I will do that for 2 years. Then we'll train our model on it. And what I'm trying to drill at is they have made the problem personal and unique. They're not trying to bring an American solution to a Nigerian to a Nigerian problem. Getting a Nigerian solution to a Nigerian problem. So and the irony is, let's just say after a year, he has convinced 10, 20, 40 people and says, after a while, look, actually, guys, when you get in your car, just on your phone, download my app, but 10 minutes, just drive and record it. It doesn't record to kill your battery. And then you train a model of it. And then you can say, okay, all of a sudden, when I train my own car, I know my car can anticipate come out of nowhere. Somebody jump into the road, a pothole. Ironically enough, your own version of your Tesla, let's just call it a Lagos car. They will call it Lagos car. Your own Lagos car would even be more robust than the American version because it has everything the American version and then more because it knows, okay, I have to obey the rules, right? But these rules, as I'm driving down at night at 2 in the morning, don't stop at that green light. So there's a reason that log is not a log. Somebody moved based on my camera. So it can now incorporate additional context that an American vote can never incorporate. And I also want to maybe tone down their Tesla a little bit. So one of the things that they haven't encountered is Musk first promised, oh, self-driving cars, I think by 2020, then it came 2022, and then afterwards it just quietly hush. And that's because there's so much complexity that comes to just driving that we human beings do like this. We don't even think about it. We get into the car, we start driving. Um, if that car that's been getting so many machine learning data encounters one scenario it has never encountered, it either creates an accident or it just stops, which creates an accident. So imagine you're able to train a model in Nigeria that has so many variables. Now, I guess to whom much is given, much is asked. In this case, Nigeria is a lot they are giving, or it's a lot everything asked at the same time. So it has enough robustness that you can even pour that over to American citizens. Say, okay, just tone it down. It doesn't have to be so aggressive while trying to follow the rules more. So what I would say in a nutshell is like, yes, I do apologize that come across very scary that, we're so behind. But it's more of we're behind, and then there's opportunity. There's opportunity there. So I always say, identify the need first. It's like, okay, what's the need? If the need is we want a self-driving car in Nigeria and we don't have the resources, okay, let's just bootstrap it. We'll just use our phones, 10 minutes recording, and then we'll just put that in the database, and then we'll open source it so everybody can put it in. Okay, after a year or 2 years, okay, let's train a model of it. We'll go and talk to the university and say, okay, can you lend us power? Let's see. So that's one way. That's one way to think about it. So Nigeria has unique solutions, unique problems, but very unique solutions. And those solutions can also scale up to the industrial market. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you very much. What I can take from your explanation is this. Every country have their own challenges, and
Indeed.
their solutions also should be unique.
Indeed.
So,
Indeed.
yes, so we can't create AI that will solve our own challenges, and it's doable. Thank
Indeed.
you very much. Yeah.
Very, very. Thank you. Welcome, Doctor. Any other question? Let me see. I can't see the chat from here, but I'm not sure if anybody has a message in chat. Let's see. Okay, so no message in chat. I don't see any hands up, and I've kept a lot of the time. So with that, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much. Unless anybody has any more question. None. But so yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to you, Emmanuel, or is it Chigozoom? Thank you so much for being attentive. I apologize. I'm going to do better and keep you not keep you past 8 o'clock. I promise that for next week. It's going to be way more tighter. Thank you. God bless. Okay, Chigozoom or Ebenezer, over to you now.
All right. I guess I'm the next in line. Thank you so much, Korede, for the session for today. I think I must say that it has really been an eye opener. I mean, starting from the couple of weeks we'll be having this, trainings on AI, and also it has really been awesome. I mean, the importance of AI is something that we cannot really overemphasize. Yeah, it's something that has come to stay, and the earlier we get used to them and also get I know hands on, I have a good hands on them, the better for us as well. One of the things among the many things you spoke about, I think one of them that resonated with me was the fact that, how you explain the functionality of AI using the Tesla car as an example. Yeah, I know I've not been on one of those cars, but I hope to be someday. So I can imagine how, the kind of work that I've been put into it, and how smooth running is, So the truth of the matter is that AI is something that we just need to embrace, and the earlier we get used to it, the better for us. So at this point, we want to really appreciate everybody for being part of today's call. Okay, I can see something from Sister Chinwe on the chat. Okay, I don't know if it's a question. Maybe I could just read it out. Korede, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yes, so Mr. Sachin made such a great point. She said the core of adapting existing models lies in the data used for fine-tuning. Nigeria needs to keep data that speaks to our cultural and socioeconomic realities there. I think in that dimension. Fantastic and so well said. Fantastic, so well said. Thank you, Sachin.
All right. Thank you so much, Tachinere, for that a beautiful contribution to the class. So I want to believe it has really been an impactful one, and as much as for everybody that connected to this call today, Korede has really, done justice to the topic. So thank you so much, Korede, once again for this session. So we put out God will bless you according to increase your wisdom in Jesus' name. Amen. So at this point, we want to appreciate everybody for being part of the call, and then we hope we see each other again same time, same platform next week for another beautiful edition of this history of AI, and then how important it is to us today. We also invite us to also join in the prayer session tomorrow, being Wednesday, same time, 7 p.m. for a prayer gathering where we take up our requests and worries to God, and then by His grace and mercy, He will attend to them, and then we'll have testimony to share. And then finally, on Friday, we have Bible study, lesson study. So we also invite us to be part of it so that we all learn from the Word of God as well. So at this point, we're going to be bringing this session to a close as we ask the media team for the theme song, after which Korede can just give us a closing prayer. Thank you.
On the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as I onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, by faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay. Though some may dwell where these abound, my prayer, my aim is higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, by faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost height and catch a gleam of glory bright, but still I'll pray till heaven I found. Lord, lead me on to higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, by faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground.
Please let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for yet another fantastic autism leadership session. Thank you for keeping everyone, guiding everyone, allowing us to meet safe and sound. Thank you for the wisdom imparted upon us today. Lord, let us take the lessons of today's session on artificial intelligence, take it to heart, and let's use them to transform the world that we want. Let it be a tool to better our existence, to better the lives of those that we love, and also be a tool to spread your gospel. Lord, have mercy upon us. Please be with us for the rest of the week. And may we to enjoy a celebration, selling.
Amen.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. See you again, same time, same venue next week. So that the Lord will bless us and keep us in Jesus' name. Good night, everybody.